Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to That's Where It's At, the Stacy Swimp Show. We're here on our inaugural show. We're very excited today. We have a very important topic today, human trafficking. We'll be talking about strip club ministry. We'll be talking about G.H.O.S.T. You heard it here, G.H.O.S.T. G.H.O.S.T is an anti-human trafficking task force of the Genesee County Sheriff's Department. And so we have Lieutenant Kariann Nelson, and we're also honored to have Mrs. Christina Tipton. Now, I don't know if they've thought of themselves as such, but I consider them modern-day abolitionists. Why do I say that? When we think of abolition, we think of slavery, don't we? I would argue that human trafficking is a form of modern-day slavery. Modern-day slavery. And I was introduced to that concept by a very good friend of mine, Mr. Ken Morris Jr. of the Frederick Douglass Family Initiatives. And here we are in Black History Month, so how fitting it is to be talking about human trafficking and anti-slavery. But today's victims are not just black. They're victims, they're black, they're white, Hispanic, they come from across cultural groups. And today we're going to be very, very excited. We're going to be talking about this. First of all, I want to welcome and thanks so much for being here, Miss Kariann Nelson. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you for having us.
Also, we have here Mrs. Christina Tipton from Tipton Ministries. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you. You know what? We're going to jump right in because Miss Nelson, she has about 15, 20 minutes with us, and she has to get right back out there saving lives today. So we don't want to hold her up, because the longer we keep her here, the more vulnerable we might have somebody out here in Genesee County. So we're going to start with Miss Nelson from G.H.O.S.T. Could you please explain to us what is G.H.O.S.T? G.H.O.S.T is an acronym, is that correct?
G.H.O.S.T is an acronym, stands for Genesee Human Oppression Strike Team. It consists of investigators from our office who are committed to combating human trafficking here in Genesee County.
Outstanding. And Mrs. Tipton, you have Tipton Ministries.
Yes.
Tell us about Tipton Ministry. What is
So
that?
we are missionaries to the sex industry as a whole.
Okay. Lieutenant, can you please define human trafficking for our audience?
Human trafficking, it can not only sex trafficking, it's work trafficking, it's any amount of servitude that somebody puts in at the hands of another person.
And when I think of human trafficking, we're talking about mostly adults, we're talking mostly juveniles. What's the average age range? And I know I read this morning, I know we talked about it briefly before the show, the Justice Department put out a study that said that the average age of entry into the human trafficking industry is 12 years of age. 12 years old. Is that right?
Well, sometimes, yes. While we generally focus on the juvenile population, we also focus on the adult women who are being trafficked. We've seen as young as 12, 13 years old.
12 years old. I can't even imagine. I can't wrap my head around it. When I was 12, I was thinking about Little League Baseball and running track in middle school.
Let me just help you out here, though. I was 12 years old when I ran away from home, and I was a missing person for 2 days. You see, I was already in trouble with my parents at home, so I ran away. And think about, for those 48 hours, I was lucky that I wasn't approached by a trafficker or somebody that was willing to take me in and harm me. And but imagine how much more trouble I was in when the police brought me back home.
Well,
so when you think about 12, we see all manner of nonsense and vulnerabilities. We see more and more children subject to sexual violence than I think ever before. Either it's always been happening and not reported, or we're seeing more and more of this decline of the family unit as a whole.
Yeah, I'm sure. So here in Genesee County, Lieutenant, would you say that we have a crisis here in Genesee County as it relates to human trafficking? I know that I've seen stats on the state and the national level, but I haven't seen a lot here for Genesee County. Talk about Genesee County. What does that look like here locally?
For Genesee County, it's not your typical ones like you would see in big cities like Las Vegas or Los Angeles, where they're being sold to these people with lots of money. You're seeing girls that most often than not come from a broken home of some sort, a single parent home, a parent that doesn't care what they do, a kid who's ran away. You see kids that don't go to school and now they're into drugs, and they fall in with the wrong group, and that group takes advantage of the child and traffics them out.
So would you say, and both of you can address this respectively, would you say that most of the victims seem to come from distressed communities? Would you say the traffickers tend to target young ladies from economically challenged families? Do you see a correlation there, or?
We could say that, and that would make it easy. But I'm going to tell you, we went to a very affluent home in Grand Blanc. It was probably the nicest house in the community, and their daughter was a victim of trafficking. So, and a two-parent home, two incomes home, educated. Both mom and dad had master's degrees. So we could say that the vulnerabilities and the substance addiction and maybe the child welfare system or poverty, we could say that all of those things play into it, sure. But it's everywhere. It's everywhere.
Now, I've seen many statistics that say that African American juvenile girls, minors, and Latino minors are disproportionately represented, overrepresented as victims in the human trafficking industry. Is that what you're seeing here at the local level, Ms. Lieutenant?
We're seeing multitude of races. We're seeing African Americans. We're seeing whites. We're seeing it really does not matter what the skin color is.
Here's the thing. Whatever shade, whatever shape, whatever kink, there's a buyer. Has nothing to do with the color or the shape or even the gender. It has to do with power and control. And I think that once we think that that person could never be trafficked because that person is too something, then we've completely misidentified really what human trafficking is.
So really, when you're too focused on labels or boxes, you're saying you're leaving somebody vulnerable.
Absolutely.
Outstanding. So, Lieutenant, what can some of the local churches do? I mean, I'm a preacher of the gospel, and I have to say I haven't too often seen churches discussing. And Ms. Tipton, you and I have talked about this briefly before, and I'm not trying to call out any church, or I'm not trying to cast shade on the church community in general, but I think it's an important discussion to have, because I think most churches that I'm involved with, or most of the churches I've preached at, or most of the pastors that I know would be willing to support. Maybe they just don't know how. Mm-hmm. And maybe they don't even know that the church has a role it can play, that we can and should play in helping to fight or to be supportive of the anti-human trafficking movement or effort here in Genesee County. So can you speak to how can the church play a more prominent and supportive role to organizations like G.H.O.S.T, for example?
Well, first of all, I think education is a big deal. You need to educate the population on what human trafficking is, the signs of it. You need to educate parents on looking at your child's phone, looking at their social media. But I also think that Christina might be better equipped to handle this. Obviously, Tipton Ministries has dove into human trafficking so much and is such a big part of the anti-human trafficking part of what we're doing here in Genesee County, that I think she's better equipped to handle how the churches can get most involved.
Would you like to speak to that, Christina?
Sure. The church has not done our kids well talking about sex. Can we just start there? The church has not done well talking about sex and healthy boundaries and healthy dating relationships. It seems like overall, and I've been in church my whole life, that the church has stayed away from that. It makes people uncomfortable. The other thing is, if we're going to talk about human trafficking, we're going to talk about sex, then we have to look at the church culture as a whole, right? We've seen inside of the strip clubs and our brothels Sunday school teachers and deacons and elders. Then we got to talk about pornography within the church.
Wait a minute. You've seen the teachers and
Sunday
the deacons, Sunday school teachers at the strip club when you're going in to do strip club ministry.
Men behaving badly. So there you go. So then you have to talk about it. Now it makes people really uncomfortable, and let's talk about something else.
Well, I'm laughing because I just had a picture of maybe a minister listening to the show and said, "Oh my God, I hope she didn't get a picture of me."
I did.
You did. She said she did. Hey, to the ministers, you better be careful out there, fellas. You never know. You never know.
You know, if you don't know what to say, you say something stupid. So I'm rolling up, pulling into a brothel, and one of the deacons is coming out. He could not get away fast enough. I'm like, hey.
Wow.
What are you doing here?
And it breaks my heart. I have to be honest, all jokes aside, it breaks my heart to hear that as a minister of the gospel. One of the things that we read in the Bible, and I'm going to say that this is, you understand, this is a Christian program. You know, it's a community program, but I'm a preacher of the gospel. So I'm always going to speak from a biblical perspective. And in the Word of God, it's just interesting. It says that because of you, God was speaking to the Israelites. That because of you, the Gentiles curse my name. And basically what he was saying is, look, and how did that, we can juxtapose that for today. What does that mean? That means as in ministry, many of us are really shaming the church, and it's no wonder. Imagine somebody in a strip club or somewhere else meeting a minister of the gospel, and imagine the effect that has on them and their views of God. So you know that's awful. But I'm so glad, Christina, that you have the courage, and I really meant when I said earlier, I consider you a abolitionist. I really do. And people, listen, it takes tremendous moral courage. I mean, I want you to think about this, and she's going to be talking about this more on the show today. Think about going into a strip club, and in a strip club, you know what you have? You have drug trafficking, you have prostitution, you have all kinds of things going in there. You have people under the influence of all sorts of drugs, cocaine, heroin, you name it. And so you're talking about someone going into an environment where at least at least half of the people there may not even be in their right mind because of drugs or narcotics or whatever else they're involved in, and she's going in, speaking of Mrs. Tipton, and doing frontline work. I just got to tell you, bravo. Thanks. You're braver than me. and then also, Lieutenant, I consider you also a modern day abolitionist, and you remind me of the Word of God where it says that to lift your voice for the poor, and we have no fear of government if we do righteous, because God, Lieutenant, created government to protect those who are doing righteousness. So I really appreciate what you're doing. I just appreciate it, and I'm heartbroken to hear these stories of young people. Now, Lieutenant, I know you don't have a lot of time on your hands, but I want to ask you, as far as G.H.O.S.T goes, what can we do? I know we had a recently well-publicized case of, I think it was a 16-year-old. I'm not sure you can speak to that, who was being trafficked by a 26-year-old. I just saw this in the news over the last few days, and I know Sheriff Swanson was talking and speaking about parents needing to watch over the kids. Both of you have already addressed that. What can we do to do a better job locally of protecting our young people? I know the parents have one role to play. We talked about that, but the community. We always say it takes a village, right? This is what we say. It takes a village. What can the village do? I asked you about the church earlier, but what about the community at large? What can the community at large do to play a better role in protecting our young people?
I'm going to touch back on what Christina said a little bit ago about obviously walking into a strip club and seeing a deacon or anybody, and she's absolutely right. These people who are wanting to have sex with minors, they come from all walks of life. You have CEOs of a bank. You have coaches of Little League teams. You have people that come from all different walks wanting to have sex with a minor. That's why our job in G.H.O.S.T is kind of two-pronged. It's not only rescuing these girls and getting them out of that lifestyle, but it's also arresting and prosecuting the people who want to have sex with minors.
Now, you brought that up. That's interesting because, Mrs. Tipton, you went to a human trafficking summit in Washington, D.C.
Yes.
approximately 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, I just got back.
And that was well publicized as well. And I saw where the president's daughter, was it Ivanka, was there?
Yes.
Talking about the funding at the national level. And I really do hope that we see that, because it seems that we need more support at that prosecuting side, that law enforcement side here in Genesee County and across the country. But Lieutenant, you had said before the show that G.H.O.S.T is one of only 2 such organizations that do this kind of task force work?
When it comes to law enforcement, yes. You have Semtech, which is down in southern part of Michigan, which is around Detroit area, and then you have G.H.O.S.T. Those are the only 2 anti-human trafficking law enforcement teams you have here in the state of Michigan. So
do we as private citizens here in Genesee County need to do a better job advocating on behalf of human trafficking to get more support to G.H.O.S.T and organizations like this?
I think so. I think people who want to get involved with your local volunteer groups, get involved with youth groups, get involved, be there for these kids.
Outstanding. So listen, we're going to have to take a break, and I know that Lieutenant Nelson has to get back to saving lives here in Genesee County. Lieutenant, thank you so much for being on the show. Any last thoughts that you want to share with our audience? Anything that you really want people to know?
G.H.O.S.T is out there. We're here to stay.
One more thing before we break. G.H.O.S.T is actually iconic. Do you know that on Beach Street and the corner of Beach and Court Street was part of the Underground Railroad, and this is now where the Sheriff's Department is sitting, iconically building an underground railroad right now for rescuing those who are trapped in modern-day slavery.
Well, we're going to touch bases on that when we get back. Thank you for bringing that up.
Christina.
And thank you, Lieutenant, for coming today. You have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
And we're going to take a break here on That's Where It's At, the Stacy Swimp Show. Hey, this is Stacy Swimp. That's Where It's At. Welcome back to the show. We still have with us in studio Mrs. Christina Tipton from Tipton Ministries. Christina, everybody's waiting to hear you talk about strip club. I got to tell you something. Every time I even say that to somebody, strip club ministry, I get this empty, this look on people's face. Strip club ministry. They can't even imagine what that is, And in fact, I've even had a couple of people say, "Sure, Stacy, you're talking about ministry." Yes, I'm talking about ministry. Yes. And by the way, we also have Christina's husband right here in studio, Mr. Tipton. Welcome to That's Where It's At.
Glad to be here, Stacy.
All right. So, and thank you both for being here today, and thank you for the great work that you're doing here in Genesee County. Christina, tell us about Strip Club Ministries. What is that?
So we just go in with some roses and gift bags and say, this is not ideal, but it gets better. We realize that if we're really going to live like Jesus, we would go to the least of these. When I got saved, I got radically saved. I don't know if there's any other way to be saved. When you come out of death and you walk into life, you are radically saved and transformed. At this point, I was aware that there was who's going to tell them, those who are in the sex industry, that they're made for more. So we went.
So you're going into local strip clubs.
Every one of them.
Every single one. I mean, what does that look like? You just walk in the front door? Are you calling management and saying, "Hey, we're on our way"? Or are you just showing up at the front door with roses and bags?
Well, there's a little bit of finesse that goes with it. That would be ridiculous for me to think that I could just show up to somebody's house and walk in. And there's a code. Right. You have to understand it's a money game, and but you
are messing with people's money, aren't you?
No. I don't have any jobs to give anybody. I have hope.
Hear what I'm saying? I'm saying you are. Think about it, and it's good. You are stepping on toes, because when you're going in there and you're rescuing women from that environment, and it may not necessarily be from human trafficking, it could just be from low self-esteem. It could be somebody who didn't have a value for herself, and
sure.
So she decides to do something other than stripping as a result of meeting you and being ministered to by you. So now you are in fact stepping on someone's toes. I mean, that's just the way it is, right?
Well, I'm going to tell you this.
So I wonder, have you had some eyebrows raised at you by the bar owners, or maybe by people who are working, possibly drug dealers, because you are in fact stepping on somebody's toe? You messing with somebody's money, Christina.
I see the way that you're angling this, but I have to tell you that Pastor Doug and I, we are missionaries.
Right.
Jesus Christ changed our lives, and now we can't shut up. We want the same freedom and hope for salvation.
I love it.
For everyone. So here's the thing. I'm glad that the strip clubs are open. I do not want to shut them down. There you go. I said it first.
Wait,
right here.
You don't want to shut them down.
Here's the thing. The lost are all in one place. So if they leave the strip club to go work at Speedway or Arby's, and they are still eternally lost without the gospel of salvation that would bring life to their soul to the everlasting, then they might as well just stay at the strip club to hear the gospel preached.
Pastor Doug, what say ye?
Well, we built the ministry upon prayer. Long before we ever entered into the doors, we would circle the strip clubs in our car in prayer. We would walk and claim it for Jesus Christ. The foundation of our ministry is built on prayer. Not that I go into the clubs, but I've prayed for people to be raised up, to come alongside of us, women that would walk in and take the gospel to these hurting women as well.
Amazing. You made me think about, Christina, when you said, we're not going to be quiet. You made me think about Stephen the martyr. You made me think about the early church when people were oppressing the saints of God, and they told him, if you don't stop doing what you're doing, This is what are going to be. These are going to be the consequences that you face, and you are fearless. I love
Here's
it. You
the
are
thing.
fearless. I'm not just ingratiating myself to you. I'm saying it takes tremendous, and Pastor Doug, you know this is true. It takes tremendous courage and faith in God, because you can't do this kind of ministry without a certain kind of personal relationship with Christ. You have to have that kind of ministry. And there's a biblical story, and I don't mind sharing it because, again, I'm a preacher, right? And there's a biblical story, and Christina, you know the story, when you had some people going out and pretending that they were casting demons, and they walked up on the wrong person, didn't they? And they said, and the man who was possessed with demons said, "Look, Paul I know, Jesus I know, but who are you?" And then in short order,
he whipped him silly.
He whipped them silly because they were perpetrating a fraud. They were pretenders. They didn't have a real personal relationship with Christ. And so here you are doing this kind of work. And so I had a friend of mine who I emailed to say that, wow, I've always wanted to do this kind of ministry. Tell us how someone can get involved with Tipton Ministries. How can someone who's listening to this show who says to themselves, you know what, I want to go support that ministry. I want to go get involved with Tipton Ministries. How can they do that?
TiptonMinistry.org. TiptonMinistry.org. Check us out and drop us a line. I wanted to share one more thing with you, Joe. When we talk about strip club ministry, think about this for just a minute. I have yet to meet a dancer who was not sexually assaulted as a child. So we're going to talk about human trafficking, but then we're going to talk about sexual violence. And I've yet to even meet a dancer who was not already assaulted as a child. Essentially, her body's never been hers. So you don't have a 21-year-old on the pole. You have a 9-year-old broken soul on the pole. When we walk in and we minister to the bouncers and the DJs and we say, hey, listen, what's going on with you? How can we pray for you? Because I'll tell you, almost every manager will say, listen, can you pray for me? Because this title, this job is keeping me from being married and having a real relationship. Because in the real world, I'm a creeper because I'm a manager of a strip club. And you realize, too, that some of the managers have just been there long enough to get some keys. They started out as a bar back or a DJ. And so I think sometimes it's like a vortex. They kind of get sucked in because the money's fast and quick. But then it just keeps them a little longer than they want to stay.
So 100%, you're saying almost 100% of the women you meet in the strip clubs have also been victims of sexual assault. Is that what I heard you say?
Yes. I have not met the woman, so you can call in if you are that woman that is really, I'm just here to make some money for college, that wasn't already assaulted as a child, because it makes perfect sense.
Wow.
And so now when the church goes in, the Christians go in and say, listen, how can we pray for you? We're going to pray about your money because you're here, whatever that looks like. Your child's father's incarcerated, or you never finished high school because you got a couple of kids. Whatever that looks like, we're here to pray for you. But one thing I wanted to address when Kariann was still here is I wonder how many times that she's got called out to a strip club for a sexual assault. I'm sure that her answer would be 0. Sexual assault happens every night in every strip club.
Sexual assault happens every night in every strip club in Flint, Michigan.
Yes. I was just out last Tuesday. Sexual assault happened. The police were not called. The police are never called.
Why is that? Expound upon that, please.
Well, perhaps the bouncer is on parole. Perhaps the manager has an illegal weapon in the house. And who's going to believe her when she was only wearing a thong?
And so she's forced to live with that assault now.
She is.
That's unbelievable. That's unacceptable. What can we do, Christina, to speak to that as a community, as a church, as a community? What do we need to do to help advocate? Where do we need to advocate? Who do we need to advocate to address that issue? That's unacceptable. We can't just accept that. What can we do as a community to help these women who are being assaulted, who currently have no voice? There's got to be something.
I think that we just need to encourage people and love them where they are. We don't have to be a voice. We don't always have to be an advocate. We don't have to sit in court with her, but we do need to walk across the street, know our neighbors, and love them in the middle of their mess and stop shaming them. There's one of the strip clubs in Flint that is directly across the street from the church. I went to the pastor and I said, hey, let's build a bridge. And the pastor was like, no. I don't want them here. I don't want them with their high heels and their low-cut shirts and their skirts. I don't want them coming in and messing up with my deacons or making our women feel uncomfortable that they were going to be chasing their men, completely missing the salvation gospel of the message.
So you had the pastor say, basically, I don't want them people in my church.
Yes, sir.
Unacceptable. So I know we don't have a lot of time, Christina, but there's something else that we've talked about in the past that I want you to speak upon. The movie Ring of Silence.
Mm-hmm.
Ring of Silence. Can you tell us about Ring of Silence?
Yes, so Ring of Silence is a human trafficking movie that was made right here in Flint, Michigan. It is based off of a true story, filmed right here in Flint, Michigan. And everyone should see it. It's 90 minutes long. It's available on Vimeo for $2.99, and everyone should see it. When you think of human trafficking, sometimes we think that they're actually missing from school. They're in another state. This movie will show you a little bit differently. She is continuing to attend high school, and she's being trafficked at night.
Ring of Silence. Where can people find that film, Ring of Silence?
On Vimeo.
On Vimeo.
Yep.
Now, I'm old, Christina, so you have to tell me, what is Vimeo?
Vimeo. Vimeo is an app or a Streamline, or it's like a Netflix. And for $2.99, you can run it yourself. Watch it on your own tablet, your PC.
Call to action. We need a call to action today. I would hate to have people listen to this show and walk away from this show not knowing what to do, where to do it, how to do it, or why to do it. And most of all, I don't want anybody listening to this show walking away not understanding how to support, especially Tipton Ministries. So, call to action. How can people support Tipton Ministries? And I believe you have some sort of function going on coming up?
We do. So I work for Genesee County Youth Corp, Reach in Traverse Place, and Reach is the runaway shelter service that houses those juveniles, and it's part of the Genesee County Human Trafficking Protocol. We actually do have kind of a pathway when we have a victim come through and receive services. There's actually a protocol on the next step, and we couldn't do that without Genesee County Youth Corp. Tomorrow is our fundraiser for $35. We'll get you a ticket, a fun night, live music, great food, Mardi Gras, Fat Tuesday tomorrow. 810-233-8700 and get your ticket.
Say that number one more time for us.
810-233-8700 and get your ticket, $35. You can come in tomorrow at the Riverfront Banquet Center at 5 p.m. and you can buy your ticket at the door, but why not just buy it today?
And also tell us again the website of Tipton Ministries and how people can go there. Do you take donations online?
We do. TiptonMinistry.org. So if you wanted to support us by tossing us some money for gift bags and cosmetics and roses and food and lasagna, we do dinner for dancers every month. So we bring in a hot meal, we break bread with them, and we love them right in the middle of their mess.
And listen, folks, I don't mind telling you, I saw, and this is not a political show, let me make that clear, but I'm going to make this one reference. I saw that at the last election in 2016, I think over $1 billion was raised between the two candidates. $1 billion was raised for politicians, and that's not, tax deductible money. And I'm thinking to myself, if we could, as American people, come up with $1 billion that we're not even worried about getting tax deduction for, surely we can do a better job in supporting ministries like Tipton
We
Ministries.
absolutely can, but the Bible reminds us that the heart is deceitfully wicked, and who can know it? Again, when we have to start talking about pornography in the home, we have to start talking about those illicit sexual affairs that are happening on behind closed doors. We have to talk about men that are out trolling and purchasing children, all of that stuff. And I'm just saying, it's very hard to start picking pockets when you're making people feel uncomfortable about their dirty business.
Absolutely. I'll tell you what, Mrs. Tipton, we're actually going to, we got to get you back here. We got to get you back here. And just so you know, and thank you again, Pastor Doug, for coming also, we're going to be doing a series on human trafficking. This is not just going to be a one and done thing. And when I say a series, we're going to do today, obviously. We're talking about it today, but we're going to come back in March, and we're going to pick a day in March. We're going to talk about human trafficking again, and then in April, we're going to cover it from levels of local, state, and federal. But regardless of what level we're talking about it, Pastor Doug, we got to have you back. We got to have Christina back, and I tell you what, you're such an inspiration, both of you. Your ministry is an inspiration, and I'm going to be talking to my friends in the church and seeing if we can get you. Christina, if we can get you into some of these churches, I think they need to hear from you. They need to hear your experience, and they need to hear what they can do and why they need to do it. Because I do agree with you that as a church, we do need to step up. We need to do more. And the Bible says, and Pastor Doug, this is true, to lift your voice for those who are oppressed, to those who are appointed unto destruction. Proverbs 31. We as the church have a fundamental responsibility to be the voice of the voiceless. Amen.
Absolutely. Thank you for having us today.
Absolutely. So this time we're going to take a break here at That's Where It's At, the Stacy Swimp Show. We've been so excited to have this spark plug here. She's awesome. She's radical. Let me tell you something. Faith is radical.
Amen.
Sure is.
Faith is radical, and I thank God for the radical faith of Christina Tipton and her husband, Pastor Doug Tipton. Thank you both for coming. And at this point, we're going to take a break here at That's Where It's At. Hey, this is Reverend Stacy Swimp. Welcome back to That's Where It's At. And I am delighted to have on air with us today, Dan the Man from Dan's Land, Dan Foley. Dan, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me, and thank you so much for coming here and doing the show. That was a great way to start. It sounded fantastic. Having Christina Tipton, Tipton Ministries. That's pretty amazing stuff that they do.
Very powerful, and thank you, Dan. Folks, I want you to know that the fact that we're even doing this show today was actually Dan Foley's idea. I had been on the show many times. Dan has been a big supporter of Stacy Swimp Evangelistic Association and the Christmas program that we did here in December,
Yep.
and he stepped up to the plate here. WFNT News Talk Radio stepped up to the plate and helped us with sponsors for our Stacy Swimp Christmas program, Angel Tree program, and then the relationship just developed from there. And the next thing you know, Dan started talking to me about a show here, and I responded initially like Scooby-Doo. So like, who, me?
He's been gunning for this from the beginning. Don't let him fool you.
Don't believe the hype.
No, it's but we love having this kind of local stuff, and this isn't new to you in the sense. I mean, you're very familiar and comfortable with public speaking,
yes,
with media and media presence. This is something you've been doing for a long time. A little bit different angle for you. I think you want to tie this more into kind of what you're doing on a positive scale, and that's why you're reaching out to people in the community, like you said, who are doing good things, who are heroes in the community, and they certainly are. Captain
Nelson,
yes, and the G.H.O.S.T team. Those guys are amazing what they do, and Pastor Tipton as well.
And that's exactly, folks. That's exactly what this show is about. Highlighting good people doing good things. And this is not necessarily a political show. Don't get me wrong. There'll be times when we'll talk about issues. I think it's very important to talk about the contemporary issues of our time, be it social. It could be anything from education to housing, but we'll talk about it from a biblical worldview, and we'll focus on the issues. We're not here to pick fights. We're not here to pick winners and losers and political political campaigns. We don't need to do that here. There are enough shows out there doing that.
Right.
And I tell you what I really took from today, Dan, is that in the church community, we've got to do a better job on 2 or 3 levels. One, we've got to do a better job putting into practice what we're doing, what we're telling people.
Yep.
I heard Christina talk about going into the strip clubs and seeing deacons and pastors and local Christian leaders
and coaches,
in brothels.
I
mean, it's not shocking to me. That's nothing new.
Yeah.
But to hear her talk about it, me being a minister of the gospel, it's disappointing. It's frustrating. And it just tells me that we've got to do a better job, secondarily, of holding our church leaders accountable. Doing a better job when we find out these things. If we see some problems, we've got to do a better job taking care of business in-house. And then thirdly, I think we've got to do a better job of fostering, developing, and cultivating educational programs within our churches, within our local nonprofits, because you heard Lieutenant Nelson say, you heard Christina say, we have a crisis here in Genesee County. Anytime we're talking about, I don't know how many strip clubs there are in Flint, but I'm sure there are at least 10, maybe 10, 15. When you're talking about every night, she's saying every night. When I say she, I'm speaking of Mrs. Tipton. A woman is being sexually assaulted at a strip club.
Yeah.
That's mind-boggling.
Yeah.
And she's saying it's not even being reported, which is consistent with the national studies that we see where a lot of victims of rape don't report it.
Yeah.
They don't report it. So,
well, and especially I would think that's probably endemic to the profession, to the people in this. And I shouldn't, I hesitate to call it a profession, but this is what women are doing. This is what they've come to, and so when they're in that situation, it's less likely to be reported, I would think, because it's something that maybe they worry they're not going to be taken seriously. Maybe they're they worry that they're going to be blamed. Maybe it's something that they just feel they have to put up with. I don't know, but especially in that arena, that's something that I think would be especially dangerous.
Absolutely. And listen, if you're out there today and you've been a victim of sexual assault, you're not alone. You're not alone. And you can call Christina Tipton. She gave the number, and believe me, if you reach out to Christina Tipton, or to Lieutenant Kariann Nelson, or to G.H.O.S.T, or the Flint Sheriff's Department, there are people out here willing to help you, willing to step up to the plate and help you. And my number is 810-449-3318, 810-449-3318. I am not a counselor. I am not a psychiatrist, but I'm someone who could facilitate. I can pick up the phone and call.
And, we've talked about this with the sheriff, too, because we talk a lot about G.H.O.S.T and the various, programs that they have and the operations that they do. The easiest number is 911.
Yes.
If you're
good point.
If you're being assaulted, if you are in a situation where you feel trapped, 911. That's what that number is for.
That's right.
And if it's not a current emergency, if it's a situation where you are you want to get out of the situation, you're not currently in jeopardy, they have the resources, they have the access, they will put you in touch with, they will contact the appropriate people to help you. So that's always a great number to call. And they get lots of calls like that.
I'm sure. In every show going forward, we're going to try to bring on what we call overcomers. We didn't get a chance to do that today, but I want people to know that one of the things I want to do going forward is I want to bring on, or at least have a story told about someone who's overcome.
You're one of those people right there. You are.
Well, it's true. It's true. I mean, I'm a living witness that nothing is too great for God. Nothing is too great for God. And we don't have a lot of time, but I'll just tell you in short order, folks, I'm someone, I came from a two-family home. My daddy was a Navy officer. My mother was an educator. No one in my family had ever been in trouble. For whatever reason, I chose to be that prodigal son. No logic behind it. No reason behind it. There was no one in my family who was a bad example to me. But for whatever reason, I chose to be that prodigal son, and I got in a lot of trouble. When I was in my mid-20s, went to jail and spent several years in jail because of making stupid choices.
Yep.
But I was blessed that a police chief, Bob Ayers for Forgotten Man Ministries, took the time to take an interest in me and led me to Christ, and Chaplain Sue, who's still there 20-something years later, Chaplain Sue over at the Flint County Jail, Forgotten Man Ministries, and Chaplain Al Novak. They took an interest in me, it mentored me, and here I am 20-something years later preaching the gospel. Folk, if you'd have said that to me 30 years ago, that one day I'd be Reverend Stacy Swimp, I would have probably threw a liquor bottle at you and asked you to pass me the weed. Because it's so funny too, because one of my good friends is Jesse Peck. You met Jesse from the Spinners, and he knew me way back in the day. And sometimes he just starts laughing when he says Reverend Stacy Swimp. Thank God. Thank God. And I'm here to tell you folks, anything is possible with God, no matter where you are at in your life. Don't let anybody tell you that God can't turn it around. Don't let anybody tell you that your mistakes are an expression of all that you are, because that's just not the case. That's not the case. God can take your life, turn it around, clean you up, straighten you up, and not only change your life, but make you a life changer.
Yeah. No, it's exactly right. And it's just so impressive to see that bearing fruit. The efforts of the people who reached you. Now you're doing the same thing, right? Paying it forward, trying to sow those same seeds that they did with you, and it's great to see. That's why we were, excited to be involved with the dinner that you put together with Prison Fellowship, with the Forgotten Man Ministry, and it's to reach out specifically to the people who have a family member in prison, because they're leaving people who are not whole as well. I mean, it affects the whole family, and so.
To whom much is given, much is required.
Yeah.
And I don't believe that God turned my life around for me to forget. Anything. So we're going to wrap it up here on that.
We got one more break.
And then
we got to come back, and then we got more we can talk about.
Outstanding. We're going to take a break here at That's Where It's At, the Stacy Swimp Show. Thank you. Hey, welcome back to That's Where It's At, the Stacy Swimp Show. And here in the studio with me is Dan from Dan's Land. Welcome back, Dan.
Dan Land, yeah. Flint's News Talk, 1470 WFNT. I just want to say again, we're sure glad to have you. We appreciate what you do, and I'm looking forward to see how this grows and develops. And I know that you're working on shows out ahead, and you've got some folks already lined up. Who are you going to be talking to next week?
Great question. Next week, we're going to be highlighting law enforcement and restorative justice, second chances, second chance ministries. So we're going to have our Sheriff Chris Swanson. He's going to be here.
Awesome.
And then we're going to have the new chaplain from Forgotten Man Ministries here, because Forgotten Man Ministries, 2 weeks from now, they're having their annual fundraiser.
Okay.
And that's very important. And I want folks to know Forgotten Man Ministries, I'm a big supporter of them. You heard me say that Forgotten Man Ministries saved my life, and I do mean spiritually and literally saved my life, and so I'm forever indebted to them. I'm honored that. And Dan, I don't know if you knew this or not, but about a month ago, I officially got approved to start going into the county jail. So I'm actually going to be teaching.
I did know that. I saw you
Bible studies.
That's fantastic.
In the county jail, and offering myself to counsel
Yeah.
men in the county jail. So it's coming full circle for me. Some 26, 27 years later.
That's got to carry a lot of weight when you go in and you're talking to people and you can say, I was where you were at.
Absolutely.
I know exactly what's going on. I know exactly what you're going through. I'm not here, preaching pie in the sky stuff. I was changed.
That's
and
right.
I know what can happen.
That's right.
To you. Yeah,
that's right. I know God can turn your life around. And that is even if you have, and this is very important, even if you are sentenced and you must go to prison to deal with the consequences of your choices,
Sure, right.
God goes with you. He's already waiting on you.
Yeah.
And that's what Bob Ayers said to me. I'll never forget it, because I was sitting in the county jail after, I'm thinking, I accept God as my Savior. I don't have to go to jail now, do I, God? But God had wrong. And Bob came and told me the story about two men on the cross with Jesus. And, hey, one repented and said, Lord, remember me when you go to your Father's kingdom.
Yep.
But he still died that day on the cross.
Yep.
He was not exonerated from having to suffer from the consequences of his choices here on earth. And so that's something that I do tell men. Don't accept Christ and expect that you're free from all consequences. It's God's choice. But at the end of the day, I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited about it. I consider, Dan, a privilege to go in and preach the gospel to those who are incarcerated.
When do you get started?
You know what? They have some reconstruction going on over there, as you know. So I think we're about a couple of weeks out.
Nice.
Absolutely. I think we're about a couple of weeks out, and I'm looking forward to it. But I'm looking forward to continuing doing ministry over at Adult Teen Challenge.
Yep.
And in 2 weeks, we're actually going to have Pastor Phil Hall from Adult Teen Challenge come on the show. And in 4 weeks, as you said, we got guests, lining up already. We got them lined up. We're going to be bringing on soon Mr. Clarence Pierce from Hamilton Health and Community Network. So we have a lot. And folks, if you have any ideas of someone that you would like to see
promoted, how do they reach out to you?
Yeah, you can get in touch with me at 810-449-3318. 810-449-3318. If you know of a local everyday hero, someone that's making a difference in this community that you would like to see interviewed on That's Where It's At, the Stacy Swimp Show, please call me, or you can email me at Stacy@StacySwimp.org. Stacy@StacySwimp.org.
Also on Facebook as well. You've got
I have a Facebook page, a public page, Stacy Swimp, just Stacy Swimp, and you can go on there and like that. You can like that page, and you can go on there and comment or give suggestions or send me messages.
Hey, whatever you do, make sure you come back next week, Monday, same time, same place. That's Where It's At, Stacy Swimp Show, every Monday here on Flint's News Talk, 1470 WFNT. Up next, Dennis Prager Show, coming up. Flint's News Talk, 1470 WFNT.
Hi, this is Reverend Stacy Swimp, inviting you to join me Mondays at 11 a.m. here on Flint's News Talk 1470 WFNT. We'll talk with people, winners, making a difference in our community. We'll talk about news. We'll be sharing many testimonies from those who are overcomers, and we'll share a perspective from a biblical worldview of today's social and political issues. It's the Stacy Swimp Show, supported by Hamilton Community Health Network. Mondays at 11 a.m. here on Flint's News Talk 1470 WFNT. And that's where it's at.